Thanks for joining us today to talk about participant to practitioner.
No worries at all. My absolute pleasure, because I think this is definitely a subject that people are interested in learning about. So let's get stuck in.
Yeah, definitely. So first off, it would be really great to hear about your journey from being a participant to now being a practitioner.
Yeah, so I would say that I've always had a really curious kind of personality. So when it came to like music and trying to develop that and just figure out what that landscape was, I was keen on going to events, going to courses, just networking and meeting different people. So some of the first kind of organizations that I came across when I wanted to learn more about the music industry and just, network, was urban development.
Yeah.
And they actually had a program called Urban Artist School, where it was like a 6-month development program for young people who are interested in music to learn about how to kind of be a creative practitioner, to work on your music, to meet different people from the industry, etc. So whilst I was there, I also joined the Roundhouse as a resident artist. So that was another way that I could then develop my skills as an artist and do live performances and get paid for those things, and also just meet people that I didn't know, and find out about roles that I didn't know existed. And then shortly after, I joined the Wired for Music Network through just signing up through the newsletter and then visiting the website quite regularly, and then just meeting the team and getting involved in co-producing. So I think that whole process probably took about maybe a year to 18 months of me just going into organizations, participating as a participant,
Yeah.
and learning about the music industry as well as different roles within the music industry. And then the opportunities came to start to lead on those projects. And I think the thing that I'm missing out is that throughout my journey as an artist and wanting to pursue this as a career, I decided to train as a teacher about a year into that. So I got my qualification as a teacher, and then I had this skill set, being a qualified teacher, but also being an artist. And it wasn't too long after me deciding to leave the teaching profession that I got the opportunity to merge those two skills. So I got offered to be the course leader at Urban Development for their Urban Artist School, which is really interesting because I was a participant on that a couple of years back. And then, of course, with Wired for Music, I was a co-producer. Then I got the opportunity to be a trustee. And then through my trusteeship, got further opportunities to co-produce events and also do some consultancy work and facilitation around Youth Voice. So when I think about that time span, we're looking at probably 3 to 4 years. So it did take quite a while, but I think kind of back to what I said earlier about me being really, really curious in terms of my own development, artistically, professionally, all those things kind of played out for me. So so that's like my short journey into how I became a practitioner from being a participant.
Yeah, amazing. I love how, you know, you can look back on that and it seems like a really straightforward and connected journey. But actually, I suppose when you were at the beginning of it, you didn't know where you would end. And actually, that curiosity and going out and finding things and getting involved in stuff actually, created even more opportunities for you to get involved in things and to develop your skill set and your experience and your network as well. Like you obviously proved yourself and made an impression on people, and therefore them inviting you back in at urban development from being a participant to then being the course leader.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm quite a tenacious person, and I think you have to be as
Yeah.
a music artist and someone who wants to progress their career forwards. But I think just generally as a creative person in this industry, there's not really a roadmap. So you do kind of have to build your own roadmap and be curious and go out there. And like you mentioned earlier, it seems like it was a straightforward path, but it really wasn't. It was actually quite chaotic. I think thinking back to what these 3 to 4 years looked like for me as a young person, literally just trying to figure it out. You know, I love music and artistry, but also I've got this skill set that I can, you know, train professionally in order to kind of finance my career. So it was a little bit messy. But I think in the end, it kind of all made sense. But I think it is that thing about when you're pursuing a creative career, wherever, you know, whatever sector you might decide to go to, financing your career is really important, and being able to sustain yourself. So I think one of the big things that I would always kind of encourage young people is to think about, you know, how do you sustain yourself financially? Because that's a big part of, you know, your well-being. In order to create, you must be kind of stable and sound and things like that. So I think, you know, I was curious, yes, but I also was very aware of the fact that I needed to make a really like a good living and not just be on the cusp of survival, and really just, you know, make my artistry or my love of music a career. And I'm really grateful that I've managed to do that. That is, you know, my version of success for me, and I think I can only kind of build on that.
Definitely. And I think, yeah, I love that phrase, my version of success, you know, because it's different for everyone. And I think sometimes, you know, we see up here and we think that's, you know, that's where I can go or that's what I can do. But actually, there's all these other jobs and pathways and careers that are underneath that, you know, in not just being the headline artist at Glastonbury, but people who work to make those things happen, as well as also having your own creative practice. And
Yeah.
yeah, for me, so like when I was doing music at school and university and stuff, I was like, I don't want to really be a performer, but I also don't want to be a teacher. And I thought that
Yeah.
they were giving me two options that were available to me. And then I thought, right, there must be something else. So, you know, started having a look and ended up doing some volunteering with some small organisations. And yeah, worked on like a summer school for a couple of weeks, which was great, and found out that I've got a real skill for organising stuff. And essentially, that is what I have then continued to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just really interesting, you know, looking back, I had no idea that there were all these jobs that you could do that were linked to music and the creative industries. But actually, there's so much more once you start to get curious and dig a bit deeper under the surface.
Absolutely. And it's really good to hear as well that you also put yourself out there and volunteered with different organizations, because I think that's really key, like having not just one organization that you work with, but a couple, to not only see the variety, but also see where you best fit and, you know, what aligns with you. And also like what is your strongest skill set. So for you it was organizing, which is brilliant. And I think for me, yeah, I'd like to think that I also found out that teaching was something that I did enjoy.
Yeah.
So those are things that I did not expect to do when I first started my artist career.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And so then thinking about, you know, the skills and the experience that you've gained, what is, you know, something you would say to other young people who are maybe part of programs like Roundhouse and Urban Development and Wired for Music and others across the country as well? Like, what would your tip be about taking the next steps in their careers, you know, transitioning out of those programs into paid work?
So there's a lot that I can think about. I think the main one that stands out to me is CPD, and that's basically continuous professional development. And that's something that I had to do. I think it was every week when I was a teacher. We had to do, or it was bi-weekly, we had to do CPD training, which was just, maybe an hour or 45 minutes of professional development. So maybe you're learning from another teacher how to do a specific thing with students in relation to teaching. But you're basically what it is, it's just revising your skill set and learning new things. And I think you have to be really open to learning new things and being able to professionalize your experience and also articulate that, because I think that we've both kind of addressed it, like the creative industries are a little bit mysterious. It's like once you enter it, that's when you kind of find out, oh, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. And I think in the interim, having a strong professional skill set or always continuing to kind of revise your skill set really puts you at the front of people's minds when they're thinking about, okay, who we're going to develop this program, who is the best person for it, or perhaps she can come and speak for this talk that I'm having or panel that I'm hosting, or do you know if she could come and perform at this event or whatever. So you start to kind of be the first person that people think of because of your continuous professional development and being able to articulate that. So I guess my next point is to continue to like keep those relationships, keep communicating, staying in touch via social media, or just dropping people an email or going for lunch and coffees if you're doing that, or just Zoom kind of coffee calls. Those are really good things to do, because again, it keeps you front and center. If you check in with people maybe, once every 3 months or once every 6 weeks or whatever, again, it keeps you front and center. And when opportunities are available, which they always seem to be in this sector, because it's quite a relationship industry. So it's built around relationships and connections and referrals from word of mouth. Once you have communicated that, oh, this is what I'm up to, just got this kind of piece of training, or I'm working on this, again, it makes you somebody that people will think of when they're next doing their event, or if it's not this year, maybe next year you can join us, etc., etc. So those are two things for me that I've always considered to be things that help me move forwards, and those are things that I definitely advise young people to do, which is get your professional development up and stay in touch with all those organizations and people as well, because people do move on. Just because one organization doesn't mean that you're going to be there forever. People definitely, chop and change quite a lot in this industry. So you never know where someone you previously worked with will end up. So stay in touch.
Yeah, that is a really good point. Really good point. There's an example of that is a young person that I know called Gabrielle, who you might know as well. And she was a Wired member, or is still. But we met when I was working at a different organisation prior to working at Sound Connections. She came and did some work and was great, and really got on. And then when I came to Sounds Connections and was working at Wired, she then got in touch, just generally, but it happened that I was then there. And we did, a little bit of mentoring and stuff to support her on what she'd like to do next, which was getting more skills in like creative music leading. And then it happened that I was setting up my own community organisation, which is around music and health for women with reproductive issues. And so I got in touch with Gabrielle and said, do you want to come and be a trainee leader, once we get the funding and stuff? And so now Gabrielle works on that project with me as well. And from meeting her at the first organisation to her now working there, I think that's she was doing those things like carrying
Yeah.
on learning stuff, carrying on keeping in touch with people. When it can be fruitful, and it might, I think we were saying this before the call, but you know, it might not be next month, next year, it could be a couple of years down the line. Like, you never know when people's paths are going to cross and things. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, and I can, with your kind of example, Gabrielle and myself, like, I could have never pictured me doing what I'm doing now, 5 or 6 years ago when I first started off, just being curious. I never knew that I could professionalize my creativity in this way, and in a way that makes me really, really happy, but also gives me the flexibility to do what I love in terms of like singing and performing, but also work with charities like Sound Connections and be able to offer something to young people and other organizations who are interested in working with young people. So you never know where people's paths cross. that's for sure.
Definitely. And I think as well, the comment you made about always learning is, it is so important. And even us as professionals, we are always learning. Like doing Youth Voice Week for the second year, not going to lie, it's way less stressful than it was last year. We know how to do things online. We know how to use the platform. So actually, for me personally, as a producer and an organizer of things, I had never done anything like this online before, and now it's become the norm again. Actually, think about going and doing stuff in person. It's like, oh, I'm gonna have to like refresh that part of my skill set. And I think for me, one of the key things about always learning is about giving things a go and not being worried about making mistakes or failing, because we are going to fail, we are going to make mistakes, but that's okay, because actually that's where we really learn how to do things and develop our resilience. And I think, you mentioned that earlier, that you as a very tenacious person, you also got to be really resilient, with keeping going with stuff.
So yes, Liz, just on your comment of resilience, I think you definitely have to be a resilient person to work in the creative industries, especially music. I think of the times, like I said, like my first 3 to 4 years in this industry was very chaotic. I was definitely making it up as I went along, but also listening to myself and saying, you know what, I want to do this. For example, I went into teaching, I got a qualification, I was a qualified French teacher, I taught in secondary schools. And then once that no longer worked for me, I said, you know what, this doesn't work and I'm going to move on, sort of thing. So it does take, a certain personality trait to be like, right, I'm going to go for this. And when it no longer makes me happy or gives me, that same feeling that it did, I'm going to just move on. And I think there's also in that moving on and in being like, okay, this doesn't work anymore, there's an element of self-care in that. And I think that we shouldn't, that shouldn't be the trade-off, in terms of like, you neglect your self-care and your well-being because you have to be resilient, because you have to be, I hate the word, but strong in quotation marks. You've just got to deal with it. This is this is how the industries are, or this is how it is. Like, I definitely don't believe in that. I think that definitely can, if not, if you don't take your well-being seriously, or if companies and organizations don't treat their staffs well, that's something that you should take really, really seriously. So be resilient, yes, but not at the expense of your well-being. I do believe that everyone is making it up as they go along, as is life. But you've always got to do what makes you happy and what is nurturing to yourself and your mental and physical health.
Absolutely. Yeah, such an important point. And yeah, I think that, maybe the old way of like working yourself to death, it doesn't have to be like that. And I think that, maybe COVID and the pandemic, whilst it's been awful and really horrendous, for so many people, actually, I think it's also given an opportunity to really think, what do you want your work life balance to be? And
Yes.
our health is so important, and whilst being creative and an artist and producer, etc., is a wonderful thing, at the end of the day, if you're not looking after your health, then how are you going to say anything? So yeah, really, really excellent. Mentioned personality traits. What kind of behaviours can sorry, say that again. What type of behaviours do you think are good for young people to develop to support them into being a practitioner, as well as behaviours for organisations to support them to do that too?
Okay, that's a really good question. So I think for participants who want to make that transition, I have mentioned, professionalism in terms of like CPD, but I want to talk about professionalism just in general. So these are things that include responding to emails on time, showing up on time, conducting yourself in a professional way. Doesn't mean that you kind of leave your personality at home, but just understand that, you have to come across really professionally, and maybe you shouldn't use certain words or colloquialisms in a working context. So those are just some things that I think are important. Like I said, it's not about leaving your personality at home. I think for me, my personality is a big part of what I do. But I guess because I've had that teacher training, I do approach my practice like kind of like a teacher would, when you are, teaching kids under the age of 16. I know I don't teach kids under the age of 16 anymore. I just facilitate at the moment, but I do take it very seriously, in a sense that I'm here to work, and we have these objectives, and my job in this session is to deliver those objectives. So I think, yeah, probably taking your practitioner role, yeah, taking it really seriously, having like a business-like approach in terms of you're being hired to um, deliver X, Y, Z, and that's your job to deliver X, Y, Z. Yeah, so that's kind of tip number one around professionalism for a participant. I also think patience is really important. I think one of the things I learned from my teacher training is that you have to be really patient, um, not only with the people that you're working with, but you've got to be patient with yourself. Like, allow yourself time to grow. The thing about being a teacher, a leader, a facilitator is that you are constantly learning. So you will make mistakes. That's inevitable. So once you get that out the way and let go of your perfectionism, which a lot of artists are, you just kind of let go of that and you say, right, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to fluff up. That's going to happen, but that's okay. We're going to learn from it. We're going to move on, and I'm going to be patient with myself and my growth. I might not get it this time, but give me a few more sessions, give me a few more bits of coaching here and there, and I'll definitely get it. So yeah, professionalism and patience. And then from an organizational perspective, I would say building trust is really important. And I think Liz and you and I spoke about this off the call. Building trust is essential, and that takes time. So if you want to engage young people in work and you want to also recruit new members of staff, you need to be committed. to building that trust, and also building a safe environment for your students turned practitioners to be in. That's really, really important. So yeah, those are my tips. How about yourself, Liz? Do you have any tips for participants?
I would add to that, you know, for participants as well, like, don't be afraid to ask questions. You know, we've all got to learn something somehow. So if you don't know, there's absolutely no shame in asking. And, you know, so that is a really important thing, I think. And the communication as well, that kind of is connected to it, is, you know, be open with people that you're working with, be interested, ask questions, but also feel free to share like your thoughts and opinions as well. And that's, you know, something that through working in this way of youth voice and participation, it's very much about sharing the space between young people and adults, because whilst young people have got lots of things to learn from older people have got a lot of things to learn from young people as well. And I think I would then say the same to organisations. And also a key behaviour, I think, is, you know, is being kind and nurturing as well. And, you know, approaching working with young people who are, you know, finding their feet, you know, thinking about it, and, you know, sharing your skills and your expertise, and, you know, working together is a lovely thing. And, you know, think about, I mean, I suppose I say this because, you know, I would have loved to have had a network like Wired for Music when I was that age, to have someone to help guide me in things. And that wasn't the case. And as you said, you just make it up and get on with it, kind of thing. But, you know, think about those things. You know, can you nurture someone? Can you mentor someone? You know, yeah, I think that's a really important thing for organisations to think about. It's not just a tick box exercise. You've got to put the time and the effort into it, and actually you'll then reap the rewards. And it might not be next month or next year, but a few years down the line. But yeah, just recognising that it's a long-term way of working is really important, I think.
Absolutely. I love the fact that you shared that it is collaborative. It's not only just, you know, what young people can get from it or what organizations can get from it. It is a two-way street. And it is a journey, and it's a relationship that builds, and it takes time. So those are things that I think in both of our journeys we've definitely experienced. So yeah, that's great to share, Liz.
No problem. Well, I think we're coming to the end there. We've spoken about being curious, always learning, asking questions, being professional, being patient. And I think actually they're just as relevant for participants who want to be practitioners, as well as organisations who are working with participants in the next generation of practitioners. So thank you so much for sharing your wonderful insights with us today, Esther.
Thank you for having me, Liz.
That's all right, my pleasure. I always love chatting to you.
Same, Liz.
Cool. All right, well, speak soon.